welcome to our next Field Notes webinar with AlignAI. We are joined by David Porras today, and today we're going to be talking about Field Notes on strategy, solutions, and ROI for financial digital transformation. David, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining today.
Hi, Nicholas, and thank you for having me.
Let's get into some quick intros before we get into the topic, which is strategy, solutions, and ROI. But first, if you're just getting to know AlignAI, at AlignAI, we help companies document, update, and consume all of their institutional knowledge around data and AI. So we focus on companies with growing AI teams as they have significant need for alignment, processes, and knowledge as they scale their capabilities. So check us out at getalignai.com and see if we can help you. We offer services as well as custom and off-the-shelf training. I'm joined by David Porras today. David, again, if you wouldn't mind giving maybe an introduction of yourself and things that you're working on that excite you, I think the audience would really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nicholas, for the opportunity. For the audience, I'm very excited to be a part of this webinar and presentation. This is a topic that is very endearing to me. I happen to be working in the forefront of core innovation and technology in the financial services industry. Is something that I'm very excited about. I'm also excited to be working with and helping the efforts of AlignAI, because one of my ultimate goals is twofold. One is to help bridge the gap between the top 4 largest banks in the US, which are trillion-dollar banks that I happen to work for in the past, and the rest of the banks, right, which don't have really the knowledge, the resources, the capabilities, and the infrastructure to really offer those type of capabilities that are really innovative and really exciting for us in financial institutions. And then the second thing is also to increase knowledge base in awareness in a simplified manner associated with what artificial intelligence is, what it entails, what it really means, in a simplified way that we can all understand. As it is today, as something that we're doing and utilizing a lot more regularly than we think, but the focus of this conversation will be on financial services and the financial industry. So that would be my 2 cents.
And I think there's so much alignment between what you just said around helping the other banks catch up with the top 4 with what we experience, the tech native companies, the Facebooks, the Airbnbs, and just the gap that we see between them and most other organizations in this country and globally as well too. So these Field Notes webinars are our way of helping everybody else basically understand AI and how AI can be applied in your specific industry. Today, obviously, we're focusing on finance. And David, I know you spoke to some of your experience. Would you mind stating some of the titles or roles that you've held in the past at different large banks or smaller companies?
Yeah, no, absolutely. High level, best way I can describe it is that I have been able to manage 25 of the most critical roles and functions in the financial services industry. That's for the past 17 years, and that is inclusive of treasury management product, services, solutions, and technology, sales optimization, innovation, AI-enabled solutions, open banking AI, digital banking solutions, ERP integration. So a number of different type of services that bank provide in critical functions. I've led those initiatives working directly with the rest of the bank, including product, innovation, and technology, and then advising and making recommendations to our clients, which in banking and for the purpose of this conversation, clients are companies, large companies managed by CFOs. So having that relationship and dialogue with those clients or CFOs that have very sophisticated internal ERP systems, and finding a way to integrate where financial transactions and services and communication can take place seamlessly between both is at the forefront of the financial services industry today. Aside from that, I spent also 15 years managing over 25 different financial functions for large companies, large multinationals and public traded companies. That is inclusive of corporate treasury, corporate finance, capital markets. And for the purpose of this discussion, I was ultimately responsible for managing the banking relationship for all those companies with 75 of the largest banks in the world, because those companies were large multinationals. So having the ability from the fintech perspective, innovation perspective, and also from the AI perspective, to have been a user, a master user of all the banking services, and also switching to the banking side, where I'm positioning and making those recommendations to clients, that gives me what I would call balance in my approach.
Yeah, and I think with that breadth of experience, speaking to the three topics today, the strategy for AI, the solution and the architecture of solutions for AI in finance, as well as the eventual ROI of AI too, I'm very excited to speak with you today. And just to get into that first topic around building the strategy, especially the strategy for AI at a bank, at a financial company, at a fintech company, you really spoke to tactics must be based on the factors at the bank. So there's some big pitfalls that banks see just based on the different types of banks in the US. And I was hoping you could maybe speak to that to start, the types of banks as well as different pitfalls by their type that they should keep in mind when building the AI strategy.
Absolutely. That's a great point, Nicholas. Building the right artificial intelligence strategy for a financial institution really has to be associated with the infrastructure of the bank, has to do with the type of clients, companies, right, in the industries that they have, and they have to be in line with the core values and strategies of the financial institution, right? So it has to be in line. From the strategy perspective, really AI in financial institution is not directly artificial intelligence creation, is artificial intelligence enable solutions that give financial institutions today the ability to really, if we look at the word innovation, right? So innovation by itself is a Latin word, a noun that is, I believe is called innovatia, which means introduce, start something new. So from the banking perspective, artificial intelligence today is the largest capital expenditure, right? Investment of financial institutions today. Approximately 90% of the top 10 banks in the US have AI related enabled capabilities, right? The rest of the banks have a playing catch up, right? So, but there are certain things that other financial institutions that are not global banks can do today and still build a strategy to utilize some of those AI related components to do and to gain the benefits that AI can provide to a financial institution today. So if I had to summarize it a little bit to make it more specific, artificial intelligence enabled solutions in banking today, what it does is provides a new set of tools, complementary tools for the most critical roles and functions in banking today that drive revenue, right? That manage those relationships with large companies and CFOs that have very, very sophisticated needs, have very sophisticated systems, right? So AI gives financial institutions and leadership in those critical roles and function in banking that manage those relationships with the ability to be more proactive,
Yep.
Gain access to data by creating a new ecosystem of data and analytics that banks didn't have before. So any bank that has an AI-enabled solution now has a tool and solution which includes analytics in a set of alerts and notifications that lets you know the financial condition of a client today in real time, right? And then in turn give you the tools necessary to be able to make proactive calls with that client, with that CFO, have a different set of conversations, and in the process, make more strategic and intelligent recommendations about the products and services and best practices that they need. So that is a good example of what artificial intelligence enabled solutions are doing today in banking based on my experience.
And I think that's really interesting. And we also hear a lot of companies when they're trying to approach financial digital transformation or just starting to implement AI, deciding build versus buy, and kind of that conundrum around, do we want to start to buy things off the shelf and implement those as a faster way to get in? Or do we start to build things, unique to our company, unique to our industry, or is it some sort of a mix? And I'm just wondering, based on what you've seen, whether different types of banks or there are important factors to consider when you're deciding from a strategic standpoint, whether we should lean into building, whether we should lean into buying, whether we should do a mix of both. And any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the focus, I think a lot about that question is related to the financial component that AI innovation and financial digital transformation entail today, right? Uh, Ultimately, all three of these technologies, capabilities, and solutions give banks the ability to accomplish a few things: to become more competitive, to optimize, enhance, and upgrade critical functions and roles in banking today, the ability to increase internal process efficiencies and operational performance. That intel gives bankers the ability to be more strategic with their conversations and recommendation to our clients, who in turn are getting more sophisticated today. So fintech innovation and technology here are at the forefront of the conversations today in banking. Specifically, those large tier one banks that have very robust capabilities that the other banks are trying to gain over time. Now, return on investment associated with those investments in the bank is really measured by financial institutions in different ways. And based on my experience, I've seen some banks that do it better, than others. But in my opinion, there are very, very strategic criteria that are needed to really be effective from the measurement of return on investment related to these innovative solutions.
You see that as a key capability. The ability to measure return on investment is a key capability. And are there any other key capabilities you see that are really key to banks, getting better at AI and getting better at implementing solutions that are relevant and help reduce costs and drive up revenue in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the financial institutions, AI innovation and fintech really are a very new, topics and initiatives overall in the world today, was really driving the need for these three initiatives is the increase of the level of sophistication by large companies, right? They have a very sophisticated internal ERP systems, enterprise platforms to manage their financials that are inclusive of API enabled capabilities and others. And that is driving the need for financial institutions to accelerate the growth, the awareness, the capital investment, the infrastructure, the resources, and the technology abilities to meet the demands of those companies. That's number one. Number two, we're beginning to see a large number of millennials and Generation Z take leadership positions in some of these large companies, right? And they have a completely different framework and mindset associated with banking, innovation, utilizing mobile, being more digital, if you will, driven. And that is combination of both is driving banks to enforce and implement and become familiar with these three initiatives that you mentioned.
And to put simply, I think it's all about who's in the seat. So you spoke to millennials more and more taking the manager, director, VP positions in these large companies, but it's also the knowledge that they bring to the table, so what they know. And I don't know if there's a single answer in terms of better training or better institutional knowledge management related to what we're working on related to AI and what we need to know related to AI. But I will say, based on what we've seen, it seems like events like this, events like conferences, events like going to targeted training or even doing custom training inside of your organization certainly help. Wanted to see if you've seen any best practices related to how teams, how individuals are educating themselves just to move these capabilities forward if they can't necessarily hire for it, or let's say they do hire for it, but they need to onboard better in some way. What do you see from an employee development standpoint?
Yeah, from that, that's a great question. In fact, that's something that I experienced in several financial institutions, recently, the last few years. In order, and that's something that you and I talked about a couple of weeks ago, in order for an AI innovation in financial digital transformation strategy to be effective, more effective, is that you have to have the right talent. You have to have the right mindset. It has to be a culture built within, driven by these individuals that have the level of intelligence, experience, and sophistication to really simplify the what it entails, how it can be obviously integrated with what the bank is doing today from the strategy perspective, from the structure perspective, and from the innovation perspective. For example, treasury management services is just one segment, right, of financial institutions. Treasury management services overall entails, for example, anywhere between 75 to 125 products, services, solutions, and technologies. There's there's a level of innovation that is taking place and that needs to take place in each one of those products and services, especially the ones that are being utilized by these large companies. So having the right individuals with experience make the right decisions associated with what products to enhance, what solutions to license, right, to bring into the forefront and replace some of the existing products and services today. So having the right mix of services, having the right person, the right strategy, it will make the overall return on investment, more effective, more impactful, and more immediate for financial institutions today.
And I think especially for AI being so cross-departmental, being such a change agent that breaks down these silos, oftentimes it's cross-team education that needs to happen, or at least to enable the collaboration and just the shared terminology too. So we see a lot more cross-functional teams working together, learning together, working on these projects just so they can start to really support AI in a more scaled manner that they haven't done before.
Correct. No, absolutely. I'll mention one thing to give you an idea. AI enable solutions, investment, and financial institution working with the more sophisticated fintech companies today, and there's three that lead the charge, is anywhere between $5 to $15 million. A large global bank, it'll be 25 to 35 million. So it's a very expensive investment for a bank, but one that can bring a lot of value, right? A lot of benefits from the optimization, perspective of people, process, roles, and functions, right? All together, working together. If you do that effectively, then you have the ability to, again, automate, optimize, help, and enhance processes internally for financial institutions, but also externally with the bank's core client, most important clients, who happens to be large companies and CFOs as well, and their systems.
So that's a great point. You obviously AI is one of the more expensive kind of solutions to roll out, but would you argue that if you have your ROI structure set up accurately, it's worth it in the long term? So yes, it's very expensive up front, but you see there is significant ROI long term with it. I think there's teams that are kind of on the fence about this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to your point, I think that having the right, really understanding how to more effectively and properly measure ROI is critical. For example, I've been privy to and I have led the implementation of artificial intelligence for 3 different financial institutions. I've been a part of the strategic team one way or another. And I can tell you that in my opinion, working with 3 different banks, including 2 global banks, that the best way to measure this is really driven by a return on an increase in revenue, right? And for the bank and for the individual, for that group, increase in adoption and utilization of those solutions, right? So those solutions, when the investment is made available to a very selected, specific area of the bank, right? That drive revenue, that manage client relationships, which are companies that have a lot of technology and services, a recommendation for those companies that have a cost associated with it. That ability to have access to the tool and to utilize it is 2 different things. A lot of banks make the investment, but it's not being utilized to capacity because they don't embrace it, they don't fully understand it, they don't see the value, was a little bit too, complex for them. So it's really focusing on the right areas is what's going to give financial institutions and leadership the ability to be more effective in their approach.
And you say the right areas, I hear the right use cases. And one thing that really surprised me in our prior discussions is you spoke to treasury management driving something like 50 to 75% of the AI use cases that you've seen as well. Would like you to speak more in terms of where you see AI use cases coming from, if in fact it is treasury management or other areas, as well as types of AI use cases that you've seen kind of come across your desk in your work too.
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way to answer that makes sense for our audience is to simplify it, right? So your question was related to AI and the utilization, right? Where it makes more sense. It related to treasury management products, but that is not necessarily the first and best way to utilize artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence all by itself, if we think about it, right? And to simplify it, and I had a good note here, is think about an issue, right? And the resolution, right? So artificial intelligence is the ability to connect both of those regardless of what it is. In the case of banking, is related to banking services, right? Transactions, communication, a number of different things. So AI all by itself, aside from just treasury management, has a direct impact and benefit in what I mentioned: people, process, functions, solutions, and that translates into better decisions more proactively. It increases and decreases workflow, right? So less steps to get something done. Resolutions, transactions, in the case of treasury management, fraud protections, right? So there's a number of different areas in finance, in the financial services industry, and in banking where artificial intelligence can really make a difference. But the most prominent now today is the ability to automate, optimize, enhance, and provide a new complementary set of tools and solutions for those managers, clients with large nationals and CFOs,
And
to really do it in a way that is more effective, more consistent, more accurate, right? In a timely manner, in a lot of cases, proactively before the fact, being, working faster. So best example I can give you is artificial intelligence utilized today. One of the biggest things in banking is fraud, wire fraud, right? So is the loss associated for a client, meaning a company or the bank associated with that. Artificial intelligence utilized behind the scenes to be able to do a lot of the analysis to look at every single wire transaction, regardless of the account, regardless of the client, regardless of who it is, and really identify if this is a valid transaction, right, from the right person, the right company, or if it's invalid, and then holds it, analyzes it, and sends a whole bunch of different sets of notifications internally and externally to the client to make the verification a lot easier, right? So it works to optimize, it works to do a number of different things that really help the process, the role, the function, and the product for that matter of that service for the bank and for the client, the CFO.
And I think one thing that people forget about in terms of the scalability of it all, it does this at a scale that a team of humans could never reach in terms of the amount of fraud that it investigates at the same time across the globe concurrently. That's the true value add that I see in terms of AI, is it can mimic human decision-making, but at a scale that even if we hired 1,000 humans, we could never address at that level too. And I think that's super fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point, Nicholas. And really to bring it, to simplify it for the audience here is, a lot of people think that artificial intelligence is really, replacing, a human or something today. And it's really not. Another way to look at it, think about this as an example. Real life examples always work best. If you have the right artificial intelligence, what was the example I was trying to make? Oh, related to someone at work.
Yeah.
And you work 40 hours a week or 50 hours a week. I'm going to put myself as the example in the roles that I've held in banking, right? That take 40, 50, and 60 hours. artificial intelligence enabled solutions today give you the ability to do that 60-hour work in 30 hours. Now, how does that translate to you, the audience? Well, imagine going from working or being out of your house 5 days a week and reducing that to 3 days a week. Now, if you ask me to do that, I think that's a great idea.
Yep.
But so it's not replacing the human component, is helping, enhancing, optimizing some of the critical functions that we do on a regular basis to have more freedom to have access to other things that in today's world, we really don't. So that's kind of the best example, is the ability to minimize the amount of hours and effort that it takes to do something that you've been doing for a long time versus the opportunity to do it differently with AI.
And I think it should be thought of as your partner in getting work done, as opposed to a replacement to you. It's a supplement to you to enable you to work on more of the interesting problems that it can't get to, where it is analytical. It is using human context that you have to understand a decision that needs to be made. From what I've seen, it just allows folks to work on more interesting work as opposed to the real high repeatability, low interest kind of work that they've had before too.
Yeah, it helps you become more effective, more efficient, and more precise in your role. The output, right, which is the output of your efforts, you can get there faster, more accurately, and then more efficiently. And that in turn gives you the ability to focus on other areas, do something else, work, have an extra 2 days off in the future, when we get to that, some companies and banks are beginning to think about that approach in the future. So AI is going to help accelerate some of that.
And just from the ROI discussion, because looking at the clock, we have just a few minutes remaining. Time has flown by the way. This has been a fascinating conversation. But just as a key point for folks from the ROI discussion, I heard that really utilization and adoption are really the key metrics to really drive ROI. Would you agree with that? And is there any other recommendations you'd have just around driving higher ROI of AI?
Yeah, totally agree. Those two are two critical components, but there are several key KPIs, key performance indicators that are new in the banking industry that some banks have access to, but they're not being utilized effectively. And some other banks need to have access to, and how to learn to utilize those performance indicators effectively to really drive return on investment, not just in AI, but also in a number of different strategic initiatives the financial institutions that are very expensive are moving into today. So is performance, there are very specific performance indicators and performance matrix that have to be utilized to make those decisions better, to be more smart, and to really understand, first of all, is this something that we should do or not, right? So saying no to something that doesn't make sense is also a good decision, right? So it's part of being intelligent about the process and the decision-making process for the bank. So, but it has to fit the core values and core strategies of that bank at that moment in time. If it does, then you're going to be more successful as well.
I think that's wonderful. And just to wrap up, one final question for you, David. What gets you excited about the future of AI? Is there a specific use case that you've seen recently that you think is novel or interesting? Or in general, do you see a large transformation just from AI across the financial industry? I'm very curious as to what gets you excited, or what have you seen lately that's particularly interesting to you?
Well, I'm excited about just what I've been experiencing myself for the last 6 years with AI. I've been being exposed to as a user, right? Meaning as a user of receiving the benefits of AI-enabled solutions, how they land and how it impacts and better my process as a CFO, right? Managing financial functions, but also on the banking side. Just the ability to, again, as I mentioned, which is what innovation is to innovate, right? Is to start doing something new, differently, that helps you improve, enhance, optimize, reduce the amount of times and the manual intensive process that it takes to do something today in my seat, in my chair, in my responsibility, in my function. If I can improve that and optimize that by 30%, which is what AI-enabled solutions is doing today in real life, then I'm 30% more efficient than I was yesterday. That gets me excited because I see the potential that it has with other areas of the bank, in companies, with their clients, with products, and many other things.
Agree. Thank you. That's a great wrap up for today. Folks, we will be posting this webinar on our YouTube page. If you want to get in touch, you can reach out to us at getalignai.com. And David, if folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in contact?
Best way to get in contact is LinkedIn. It's fully available. You can send me an inbox and I'll be happy to answer any questions and help your efforts in any way that I can. Thank you.
Same. You can find me on LinkedIn as well and email me at nick@getalignai.com. David, thank you so much for your time today. This was such a fascinating conversation. I hope participants, you got a ton of value out of this, and we will see you on the next one. David, have a great rest of your afternoon. Thanks again.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Goodbye.